What is up? Good afternoon or morning, ladies and gentlemen, depending on where you're coming live from with us. But we are very excited to be starting day number 2 of this incredible event of navigating today's evolving housing market. And before we start, first and foremost, another huge shout out and thank you to Flagstar Bank and Freddie Mac for making this event possible for all of us. And joining me to kick off the day is my good friend and not only mentor, but guy who just kicks my butt in golf. I think we played once together, but the guy, his golf skills are way above mine. But John Gibson, what's up, brother?
Hey, what's going on, Josh? Good to hear from you again. You're too kind. I don't think it was that bad of a beating, but I did win.
It was bad, dude. It was bad.
Yeah, well, that's okay. There's always room for improvement, right? No, hey, man, excited to be here. Obviously, I think we had a really good session yesterday. A lot of good speakers on some really important topics around the new now and what's next in forbearance with our partners at Freddie Mac. And as you can see today, Josh, we're going to cover a really good agenda here real quick for everybody.
I was going to say, we're starting off today is talking about tools to master the current market. You and I talked about this yesterday. It was talked about a lot by all of our speakers, but our industry is changing. Things are evolving, and you need to know not only do you need to have the knowledge, but you need to have the tools at your fingertips. You got to make sure you think of any tradesman, you think of anybody, you got to have the right tools. And mortgage professionals, real estate professionals are exactly the same. If you don't have the right tools, you can't do the job right. You can't do it efficiently. So, John, starting off today, we got tools to master the current market with Christy Sukumnut. I always say her name wrong. Sorry, Christy. Christy and then Christy Suk. That's what I always call her. And then Naja Vital, Freddie Mac. So, John, this is going to be a really good opening session. And then to follow that,
yeah, we got helping borrowers of the future tackle challenges of the past with some really key executives at their different companies. Obviously, Lee Smith from Flagstar, who's our COO. You have Danny Gardner over at Freddie Mac, who you'll hear from, and Ken Perry from the Broker Knowledge Coop. And really, that's going to be like a fireside chat, right? With everything that's going on in today's world and what impacts what you do on a day in and day out basis. You have key individuals both at Flagstar, Freddie, and the Knowledge Coop, or the Knowledge Group, I should say, and letting you into kind of like a fireside chat with them on things that are, topics that they're discussing and what they think is relevant in today's marketplace. So really good session there. Looking forward to that as well.
Yeah, so this is good. That session in particular is going to be really exciting. And not to be a spoiler at all, Danny Gardner is going to say something you definitely do not want to miss. You're going to want to stay tuned all day today. There's definitely an announcement that you're going to, not so much of an announcement, but a clarification. So you're going to want to stay tuned. And John, what's cool about that session, like you said, it's kind of a fireside, kind of almost a bar session. No beer included on this. We're still midday.
Yeah.
But this is definitely going to be a session you don't want to miss.
Yeah, for sure. And look, like I said, pretty powerful session yesterday, and wrap it up again today with 2 sessions that I think are both market relevant and allow you some insights from very talented subject matter experts in their fields. And no better way to get that started than right now, right? So tools to master the current marketplace. We had mentioned a couple individuals. I'll let our moderator, who I'm going to introduce, one of our own from Flagstar, Beverly Meeks. She is our first vice president, CRA director at Flagstar Bank. As first vice president, Community Reinvestment Act director, Bev is responsible for developing, implementing, and administering all aspects of the bank's Community Reinvestment Act compliance programs, including such things as the bank's strategy for meeting the lending, investment, and service needs of communities in which the bank operates, including low to moderate income neighborhoods. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to Bev, who's going to moderate our session.
So we just found out live. This is why we love doing these things live, ladies and gentlemen, is Bev had a computer glitch. So she's going to be joining us here in just a second. She had to reboot her computer. While she's doing that, I have the honor and the pleasure of introducing these incredible women that are going to be talking in the session. Bev's the moderator, like John just mentioned. She'll be joining us here. But let me dive into these incredible ladies of our industry. First and foremost, Christy. Guys, if you don't know Christy, she's a senior vice president over at Flagstar, over the chief of staff and director of Mortgage Strategic Initiative. That's a mouthful, John. I don't know if I've ever read that full title, but
it doesn't fit on one business card, Josh.
I say, dude, But here's the thing with Christy. I've known Christy for a long time, and she is one of the most bubbly, excited. She is enthusiastic. And ladies and gentlemen, if you do not follow her on social media, especially LinkedIn, you have to. She's constantly putting out always inspiring messages, but she's a 20-year veteran of our industry who is currently senior vice president, like I mentioned. And in this role, she's responsible for mapping future initiatives that will support Flagstar's leadership in the mortgage industry. That's why she's talking about the tools to really master the current market, because she knows what's going on in our market right now. So that's Christy. And then our second speaker is going to be Naja Vital. There she is, the Affordable Lending Regional Manager with Freddie Mac Single Family. And I know there's another, here it is, single family client and community engagement team. She supports the sales and lending partners to develop and execute seller plans for meeting affordable lending, community outreach, and CRA goals. She analyzes market data to identify trends and opportunities and develops strategic direction from market information. Guys, that's the first time I read that, and I would say that was not bad. But Naja, I've had the opportunity to get to know her recently, and she is absolutely just like Christy. If you're ready for some excitement, some enthusiasm, these ladies are going to bring it to you. So it sounds like Bev is back on. They're ready to take this off. So John, you and I are out of here. We're going to let these ladies rock the stage.
There you go. Take it away.
Naja, it looks like you are up.
Me?
You're going, like, you might as well jump in and go first. You have more energy than anybody I know. So
the pressure. So thank you so much for having me. And thank you to our friends at Flagstar. I am so excited about this particular session, right? Because we're talking about navigating the marketplace, and so many things have happened in this new normal, like we called it yesterday. And there's so many, what I think is funny and interesting is that we are now called essential workers, and we've never had that title before. And so here we are being called essential workers, and it's kind of funny because I'm thinking, well, we've always known that. We've always known that we're the essential workers. It's what we do. We put so much energy, and we understand our marketplace, and it's important, the things that we add to our communities and to our country when it comes to the value of home ownership. So for us to know that is important, but not only is it important for us to know that we are essential, because sometimes we forget that. And in the midst of the busy, we forget how essential we are. And so it's important for us to really connect the dots and regroup, understand the purpose of why we do what we do. We all know that great feeling we have when we get to the closing table, that we've helped that first-time home buyer, that we've helped that family acquire their first home or their second home even as they upgrade. But it's that great feeling of being able to connect to our community. If we want to really hone into that importance, and if we really want to hone into the purpose that we have, we need to be more effective. So when we talk about why we do what we do, and the effectiveness, then that makes us be more prepared, understand what the tools are, what are the resources that are out there, so that we can continue to do the thing that we love to do, but doing it effectively. So I'm very excited about today's session.
Well, you kicked it off perfectly, because I think that there are 3 easy steps. Doesn't that sound like a clickbait title? But 3 easy steps to growing your affordable housing. And the first step is to learn. You've got to learn what products are out there, what the needs of the community are, and really how to better engage. And once you know what that is, step 2 is to make a plan. Right? You wouldn't jump in your car and drive to Disney World without a GPS or at least a map. You don't want to try to grow your business, particularly in any market, is you want to have that plan that says, these are the people that I'm going to call on. These are the communities I'm going to help. Here's how I'm going to help. Here are the tools that I'm going to have to execute with, and how you're going to actually execute with those tools. So maybe it's hosting a first-time homebuyer education workshop in person, pre-COVID or post-COVID. And during COVID, maybe that looks like some kind of online instruction or tools. But what does that look like for you? The other thing that when you think about planning is to plan your message, because messages look different, for different communities. And not that you're changing your heart about what you do, but you want to speak to their needs, to their pain points, to their things that they need for understanding. And then finally, that third and final step is to get your behind out of the chair and execute. Ideas are worth nothing, plans are worth even less if you never execute. So I think that that's where we are, right?
You gotta close, right? The rate of home ownership does not move unless you sign on the dotted line and it gets recorded, and all of a sudden that's your rate of home ownership. So it really is about the execution.
Yeah, and I think that's a great intro into kind of our session today and what Christy and Naja are going to be talking about. So I'm just going to moderate. I know Bev's been having some technical difficulties here in last second, so you got to love going live. So here we go. With that being said, I have some questions and kind of like thought starters, and we can go from there. So the first one I'll put out there is, obviously yesterday we had some pretty powerful sessions. We had Freddie Mac's deputy economist and VP of Housing Insights and Solutions. They provided a wealth of information and an overview of what's going on in the marketplace today for our borrowers, right? So the question I have is, how can our audience, the people that are viewing this today, expand off of what they heard yesterday and that information and alter their planning, their outreach, their marketing to meet the challenge of the challenges that our borrowers are facing today and into the future?
Right. So Cindy gave us a lot of information and a lot of data. And from our perspective, we understand that data is not just data for those great, oh, that's nice to know, right? They're actionable items. So we look at the data, and data tells us the story. Data points us in the right direction. So in our case, when we really take a look and a deep dive at where the needs are, where the gaps are, we can then plan around our new offerings and what are the things that we need to do to really make sure that we can help our communities and bridge those gaps. So from our perspective, we use that data to make sure that we can bridge those gaps. And for the audience members, that data is also very helpful for you as you work on your pipeline. So there's certain areas of the country where affordability is more of a challenge. There's certain areas of the country where maybe credit availability is more of a challenge, or maybe inventory. So those data points really help us create a decent pipeline, and it really helps us to create a plan. Back to Christy's point, how do I plan on increasing my business, and how do I plan to better serve my community?
Look, there comes Bev. Hello, Bev.
Hi, sorry about the technical problems there. I believe we're on the second question. Is that correct?
Correct.
Great. So just as the borrower of the future is evolving, we must contend with an ever-changing market, and that can be overwhelming for mortgage professionals. What advice would you give a loan officer to be successful in this environment?
Well, starting back with what Naja said earlier, we talk about the data, and that points us in a direction. So once we know what that direction is and what the needs of the community really are, then it's up to us. Back to step number one is to learn. So we need to learn what those loan programs are. So I know that we have some information that's going to go out after this session where we're going to be educating folks on some particular options that are available through partnership with Flagstar and Freddie Mac. So when we think about these home possibles and home choices, like where are we and what do we get to do to offer that to the consumer, right? We also need to understand, back to what we talked about with those key actions, is how do we educate a borrower? One of the things that we see from data is that there's a lot of misinformation. One of the common things that I've heard from customers when I originated, and that we continue to see in studies, is that they don't know what amount of down payment is required and what it takes to actually be a successful homeowner. And it really is our job to provide those tools to them, to provide that education that allows them to see that home ownership is actually within their reach.
So what suggestions do you have for referral partners? Nanja.
Oh, okay. So as far as referral partners, I think that the most important thing, and I love being in this session because when we were having this conversation, it's all about community leadership. So when it comes down to our partnerships, what we do is what we do best. We are subject matter experts. We are trusted advisors. And as long as our partners and our sphere functions in the same way, we are all heading in that same direction. What we like to call at Freddie Mac our affordable ecosystem, right? It takes an entire village of folks really understanding their purpose and how they're bridging those gaps and moving forward. And everybody has a different area of expertise, but really, if you can put together the proper team and understand the power that we have in our communities, I think that is incredibly important. And education is key. Education is key from a real estate professional, from a loan officer, from management. It is all the way that it's going to trickle down to our consumer. And we continue to find in the surveys that we do in the research that our consumers are still very misinformed. So education from our perspective is the most important thing.
Christy, did you want to add anything to that?
Well, this is an area where Naj and I, if we get going, like we can go all out and just talk for several hours because it's what we do is all about the consumer. So why I get up and get out of bed every day as an originator is to help people get into home ownership. And it is disconcerting to see that regardless of the amount of time that I've spent in the industry and the amount of time that folks like Naja get out in the community and educate, that there's still so much misinformation. And it is incumbent upon us as leaders in the industry to educate in as many ways as possible. So, are you getting out there as a loan officer and educating folks on social media to the extent, of course, that your company allows? And please stay within those particular guidelines. Are you getting out in the community, to the extent again that you're able to in today's market? But as we think about the future and as you make plans, are you actually getting out, sitting with members of the community and making space for them to be able to raise their hand and ask the questions that they really need the answers to?
Okay.
Yeah, and it's important because what we found in our research as well is that folks that are actually mortgage ready are sometimes too afraid to apply. They don't even know that they can apply for a mortgage loan. There's a lot of not only misinformation, but a lot of folks that have just gotten very discouraged because they hear a lot of things out there that produce discouragement. And it's important to note, let's have that conversation. Let's have those trusted partnerships. Let's discuss your particular situation. Not everybody has a student loan. We know that only 20% of millennials have a student loan. We know that 90% of America doesn't have a student loan. But for some reason, we have all of these ideas that folks just don't want to apply. And it's on us, community leaders, to have those conversations, open up those lines of communication. I think that's incredibly important for us to continue to do because there's optimism out there. And I don't know if you've noticed, but we are open for business.
Great. And speaking of clients and what's happening today with COVID, while our goal is successful, sustainable home ownership, the fact remains that several families are out of work and struggling right now. What would your advice be for loan officers who have clients who have suffered a setback?
Well, it's interesting. We talked about forbearance yesterday, and this is really a hot topic because there are a variety, as they talked about yesterday, there are a variety of I guess levels of people in forbearance. There are those that applied for the CARES Act forbearance but have continued to make their payments. There are those that have applied and have taken some deferments. There's some that have already caught up. There are others that are still wondering how they're going to put food on their table. And to not just point just a minute ago, we have to be open and understanding and empathetic to all of those different situations and prepared to educate folks. Some of the best tools that we have are literally just making ourselves available to have a conversation and explain what the rules are. But that also goes back to the fact that we have to be knowledgeable on what those options are. So that starts with the folks that are attending this call or watching the replay, that we're learning about what it looks like to come out of forbearance, what it looks like to prepare yourself to be a successful homeowner. If let's just say that you weren't in forbearance, let's just say that you were a renter and you had aspirations of purchasing a home, yet you suffered some of the same setbacks because of loss of job or a furlough, or maybe it's not even yourself, maybe it's your partner who had that, and you had an overall shortage of household income. Maybe you're seeing something different today with the fact that you're having to, I'm going to call it homeschool your kids, like that virtual conversation, virtual education. And maybe that is creating some stress, or maybe that's creating a desire to move. There are so many individual situations. The other thing is, you have to remember that you are one human, and you are not going to be able to sit down with 93,724 people that are in your marketplace. So what are those electronic tools that allow you to communicate this message greater? So is that a way that you can get folks into Credit Smart? Right? This is a program that's offered via Freddie Mac that provides some phenomenal education around credit and successful home ownership. And I'd like to see a raise of hands electronically by the people in the audience. How many of you have ever used this product? How many of you have ever recommended it to your customers? It is an amazing product that basically allows you to multiply yourself so that you are able to serve more people. So that doesn't mean that you give up your ability to sit down and have that one-to-one conversation. It just says, when I have that one-to-one conversation, instead of taking on the need to educate everybody from soup to nuts, I can say, I can see that you need this education. Let me provide you this valuable tool. Naja, what are you saying?
Oh my, I'm like, oh wow, I've talked so much about it. It worked. Christy's on board. And it is a great resource, honestly, because the Credit Smart Suite is about financial education. It's about empowering the consumer. It's about really helping folks that may or may not be mortgage ready today. However, we are still taking on that place of leadership, of community leadership that we all aspire to. And when it comes to the home buyer use section, it is within the Credit Smart suite, but it is specifically designed to help with the home buying angst that we're also familiar with. So we've always heard that the process of home ownership and home buying is so incredibly stressful. But with this particular resource, it really simplifies the process, and it allows the consumer to really understand some of the back stuff that we are continually trying to explain to them, and what that process looks like. And it just encourages that trust. It encourages the trust, and it's why we're having the session that we're having today. Because for the subject matter experts that are on this call, what it's about creating additional trust. It's about giving your customers additional resources. It's about knowing that we are open for business, but that your customer is trusting you with the information, which is why we're doing 4 sessions, right, over 2 days, so that you can get all of that information and really relay some of that confidence back to your customers.
So Naja, I'd like to throw in something here. If I'm sitting there and I have created the confidence with my customer, and I have helped educate them to the point where they know, hey, I can purchase a home and I can be successful at it. What are some of the best programs that help low to moderate income borrowers who are really looking to make that first step? I talked about them a minute ago, but can you give us just a little bit of a deep dive?
Sure.
I know we don't have forever today, but I think it would be beneficial to the folks on the call to hear a little bit about what makes some of these programs unique, because it's easy when we've been in the business for a long time and we know, enough about 10 or 12 programs, which is an awful lot, that this is how we serve a borrower. But these programs actually have some very, very unique features. So,
well, yeah, sure. And what's important is that we go back to the purpose of why we do what we do. right? Because if you look at how much it takes for somebody to save 20% down, it's somewhere between 14 and 21 years, depending on what part of the country you're in and what your demographic is. So it'll take anywhere between 14 and 22 years to save 20%. That's a long time for somebody to enter the home ownership market. 5% down, it takes somewhere between 3 and 6 years. But if you look at that 3% down, that's our happy space, right? That's where we can really help people get into the market. So for the 3% down, it takes someone between 2 and 3.5 years to put together that 3% down, which is why we have the Home Possible. And so the Home Possible is 3% down, but it allows for down payment assistance. So it'll allow up to a combined loan to value of 105. So that's very similar to your FHA. The difference is that it's 3% rather than 3.5%. Your MI can go away after you build 20% worth of equity. And for me, the most important thing, especially in the affordable space, is that there is no reserve requirement. I think that's incredibly impactful. It's going to make a difference. If you talk to today's millennials, they'll tell you that their biggest barrier towards home ownership is that down payment. And not only is it a down payment thing, it's a reserve thing. So then it's taking more time. Through the Home Possible, it's 3% down that will allow for the 105. And even that 3% can be a gift. So it's a win-win situation when it comes to the Home Possible. When your Home Possible is not available because there is an income limit, then we go back to the Home One. And the Home One is also 3% down with no income restrictions at all. But when it comes down to this space, what we call the affordable lending space, keep in mind it's also known as the low to moderate income. So low to moderate income is that 100% of the AMI for the country. That's a third of our market. That's our workforce. This is who we are. This is why we do what we do, so that we can impact our workforce, our normal folks all day long, our normal workforce. That is 100% of the AMI. That's who we're trying to really reach. And so those two programs are at the core of everything that we do all day, every day.
So many of the programs require homebuyer education certificate. And then many of them, as you've just mentioned, allow for down payment assistance. Can you talk about where to find those resources?
Okay, so one of the resources that will be going out with the replay is some of the sources and some of the links that will give you some of all of that. But within our income and eligibility tool, you will find when you can put in the address and find out if your property is eligible for a Home Possible. There's also a sublink that will give you all the down payment resources that are available in that community per the specific address. So it's a really nice tool that gives you the ability to really pinpoint what are the down payment assistance programs that are available in that geography. So we've minimized some of the additional headache.
I love having those tools available because it means as an originator that as I'm sitting with a customer, I'm able to provide some value and maybe dispel some of those myths that they had. So I think that's really
true.
helpful.
And in the real world, whenever somebody says down payment assistance, sometimes, not all, but sometimes we're under this impression that it's impossible, that it never gets done, that it's a myth, that it doesn't exist, when we're actually telling you it exists, it happens every day, and it's actually very underutilized. So again, we want to be able to pinpoint what those opportunities are and go and grab those, right? Because we need to understand where the opportunities are and where we can bridge those gaps to really make a difference.
Are there any special training programs available for loan officers who want to learn about products that are available and services that are available for low to moderate income borrowers?
Well, those resources are always available, and Christy and I have partnered together in many opportunities to bring those together to the marketplace. So those are always going to be available. We do have them available online. And Christy, if you want to talk a little bit about some of the things that we've done.
Yeah, what I was going to say is this is an opportunity. If you need to learn, raise your hand because you don't need to spend a lot of time trying to dig around and find those resources. I would say for every loan officer or even real estate professional that's here on the call, one, for loan officers in particular, go and talk to your product team. Your product team has an amazing amount of resources. Like I know here at Flagstar and other places that I've worked, the product team partners with the training team, and there is always education materials available. You just have to avail yourself of them. In addition, Naja and I've talked about the fact that we get out and do a little bit of a road show
Me
to make
too.
sure that people have an opportunity to ask those kinds of questions and really dig deep about how it impacts their community. Because one of the things over my time in the industry that we always hear from folks is my market is unique. And while that's very true, there are a lot of unique factors in each market. There are a lot of similarities. And so you can actually tap into the experience of people that have originated these products across the country and figure out how to adapt them to your local space. And so I would say, one of the things you can also do is hit up me, hit up Naja. We're on LinkedIn. And if you've got a specific question, we'll help direct you to the right resources. We never want somebody who has a great desire to help with the affordable lending product to get out into the market and help customers in their area.
And we're paying attention. We're paying attention to those needs. That's where we get into the weeds, right? What's the need? What's happening out there? How does data tell a story? How do we go back and really address those needs? And the best example that I've got is how we went from 20% down to 5% to 3% because there was a need.
And that's exactly what we do with CRA as well. Also, raise your hand, let us know what the needs are there. If you're seeing a particular need that we don't have a product for, let Christy and I or Naja know. We're all here to help. So that concludes our session. I want to thank our panelists. All the resources that Naja and Christy spoke about, those will be emailed to all the participants on the call. Again, thank you for watching Tools to Master a Current Market.
Brilliantly done, ladies. Oh my goodness, John. See, we pick the best of the best in the mortgage industry to be talking about these topics. And dude, I don't know about you, but we're talking about these different tools, talking about what's available right now. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you took some notes. And if you didn't as well, like Bev said, we're going to be sending you guys an email so you have all this information at your fingertips. We're doing it with John. We're making it simple, man. We're trying to keep things as efficient as possible.
Yeah, great session, and thanks to Beverly, Christy, and Naja, right? I think it flows right well in line with the agenda. And look, the one thing I will say, Josh, you and I have talked about this before on numerous occasions over the years, right? Knowledge is power. So, to educate yourself and to help educate your borrowers. And again, there are many more people on this than just loan officers or Flagstar business partners, right? We have some real estate agents that have registered for the event. So I can't stress enough, Freddie Mac is one of our a great partner, just a tremendous amount of resource hubs that they have. And you'll get those, you were talking about a second ago, Josh, you'll get that information. But there is so much out there for you to educate yourself on and to help advise your borrowers that you're working with through Freddie Mac and the resources that they provide. Valuable. And I would challenge everybody to kind of think outside the box and expand your horizons from a standpoint of educating yourself.
Well, John, again, that's exactly why this event is so powerful and so cool that Freddie Mac and Flagstar put this event on, because there's tons of knowledge out there. And you guys at Freddie Mac and Flagstar continue to do all that they can to benefit, to add value to our industry. So just like you said, John, there's plenty of resources out there, but this is why we do events like this. This is why you guys are putting on an event like this. So, and our very last session to come, John. This is an exciting one. A lot of people have been waiting for this. It's going to be a ton of fun. It is helping borrowers of the future tackle challenges of the past. Just that title alone. And as we introduce some of these speakers, you'll see why John and I have been so excited for this session. Everybody in particular, this entire thing has been a ton of fun, but this session, John, it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to it. I think each one's built off of each other, right? And if you remember, we kind of built this agenda around feedback that we've been hearing from our business partners, during this, environment that we've been in, from a worldwide pandemic perspective. So this kind of culminates the 2-day session, hour and a half each day. And and let's get started, right? Let's, if you can move to the next slide, we'll introduce some of our speakers for the next session. So first up, Lee Smith, our CEO here at Flagstar. He's the Executive Vice President, Chief Operating Officer. Lee's been the Chief Operating Officer over here at Flagstar since 2013. In his role, he oversees and is responsible for strategic direction of all the bank's operational teams. He has a passion for process improvement and identifying key efficiencies that allow for the continued growth of the bank. And I can tell you, I've been here now going on a year, and that last statement rings true more than I think the words itself. Lee is just, surgical and a master at that with regards to process improvements and finding efficiencies and ways to grow. I look at it from our bank's perspective, but giving you information on growing your business. So Lee's going to be one of our speakers. Next up, we have Danny Gardner, who I think would be the next slide if we're moving on. Maybe not. There we go. Danny Gardner. He's the Senior Vice President, Client and Community Engagement at Freddie Mac Single Family. Danny's the Senior Vice President of Client Engagement and Community Engagement for Freddie Mac. In addition to assuming sales leadership, Mr. Gardner is responsible for fulfilling Freddie Mac's community mission to provide sustainable homeownership, education, and financing to families who are traditionally underserved by the marketplace. He's also responsible for overseeing Freddie Mac's delivery and performance against single-family affordable lending goals, duty to serve regulation and access to credit activities in the FHFA scorecard. So we are really excited to have Danny with us today from Freddie Mac.
And last but current, of course not least, Danny and Lee, I'm very excited to hear from. Danny and Lee are one, if you guys haven't had an opportunity, you're in for a treat. But I am humbled and honored to introduce not only one of the top CEOs, executives, and leaders in our entire industry, but I call him one of my closest friends. Ken Perry is one of those guys who I don't even need to read this guy's bio because we have become so close. And ladies and gentlemen, if you didn't know, you're actually on his platform. You're watching this live from Ken's platform, the Knowledge Coop. They continue to innovate. He's a visionary. He is somebody that you have to hang around, because every time I hang around him, I get better. I become better as a person. I become better as a leader. Ladies and gentlemen, the CEO, the founder of the Knowledge Coop. And guys, if you haven't seen what the Knowledge Coop, all of us have been there. For all of you originators, we've all been through that boring as hell CE. We've all been there. But if you want to see CE taken to the next level, you got to check out the Knowledge Coop. It's brilliant. But Ken, it's the things as a visionary and the things that you continue to do to innovate and to step up in our industry. We cannot thank you enough. And I'm excited to have you moderating this session, brother.
Dude, I'm going to have you introduce me every single time I speak anywhere. Like when I go into parent-teacher conferences, I want you there. Like, you're about to meet the parent that is the best parent in the world. Like, I'm ready for you to
Ladies and gentlemen, Ken Perry.
So awesome, man. Thank you. And I'm super excited for this. It's a fireside chat. So Lee's joining us. Danny's right there. I thought about doing this next to a fireplace, but I couldn't find one, and it's 90-something degrees in Bend, Oregon, where I'm at right now. So I figure I'm close enough to a fire here. So gentlemen, welcome, and let's begin our chat. So Lee, first off, thanks for coming. Let's start with you. How you doing today?
Yeah, doing very well, Ken. Good to see you. Good to see Danny. Looking forward to the next 50 minutes and covering a lot of ground here that is extremely important for everybody tuning into this WebEx right now.
Yeah, definitely. Danny, how you doing today?
Sorry, I'm doing great. I've got a little bit of construction going on in the house next to me, and I asked them to take a break, so they promised me they would here in a couple of minutes. So I apologize if there's any background noise, but I guess as we're all living in this remote work environment, there's always that Murphy's Law of remote work that seems to jump in on me here. So anyway, wonderful to be here with everybody. I want to just tell Flagstar especially, thank you so much for the opportunity, and for all of our guests and listeners today. Thank you for the time commitment.
Yeah, it's so funny how different things are when you've got to work out of the house, and so many people working from home right now. It just changed everything. I was on a customer service call last week with AT&T, and I'm pretty sure she was hosting a birthday party for her child. And she just kept putting me on mute for like a long time and coming back going, okay, I'm okay. But like every time she would come back on, you could hear the party going on in the back. I'm like, okay, this is not the same world that we have lived in for so long. So I want to open this up. Oh, Lee, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I'm sure the reason Danny's standing up is so we don't see little people running around. I noticed he's standing up.
I have to use the basketball move and box out. So yeah.
Oh, nice. Oh my gosh. So guys, it is, in thinking about what we want to do here today, you both were on a call with me earlier last week. We talked about, what is it that we can really benefit the industry with? And we can talk all about how we got here. And we can talk about, if we're looking at fair lending, we can talk about some of the things that have happened in the past that led us to the place we are right now, the lack of homeownership, the lack of availability of credit to every group. Or we could talk about what we can do going forward, because I think there's a lot of things that we can really focus on in making sure everybody knows that homeownership is possible. And I think that that's something that I'd like to focus on. I would like to not work in the past, but really work in the future, because I've seen some things, and you guys are both involved in some pretty cool projects right now in getting more people to understand they can be homeowners. And let me just kind of start by framing this. I live in Camas, Washington, and down the street is a city called Vancouver, Washington. And I drove by a bank called Heritage Bank. And I don't know Heritage Bank at all. I hadn't heard of them prior to this. And it occurred to me that I would never have gone to them for any financing because I didn't know who they were. And so my likelihood of using them was zero. As soon as they put a bank in my city next to me, now my likelihood goes up, right? Then I got a marketing flyer and I'm like, okay, well, now it even goes up higher. Like the more I know somebody exists, the more likely it is that I'm going to actually use that company. And that's where redlining's kind of been taken, is if you put a branch or you put a presence in a community, you could actually tell people that they have a chance of getting availability of credit and they too can be homeowners. And so that's what I want you guys to focus on a little bit. How are you reaching, and how can we all reach into those neighborhoods that have been previously underserved?
Yeah. Do you want me to go first, Ken?
Sure.
Yeah. So first of all, I think it's a much bigger answer than just around home ownership, because it's about redeveloping communities, areas, and doing a lot more than just focusing on housing. And so I think, the easiest way to do this is, let me talk about some of the initiatives Flagstar has been working on, because we've tried to bring a lot of these different things together, but it's all about regentrifying areas and really developing and promoting home ownership. But if you take Pontiac, that's a city that's about 8-9 miles from our head office, from where I'm sitting now, and it's a city of 65,000 people or so. But back at the end of 2016, beginning of 2017, we decided we were going to fund a $10 million 5-year multifaceted initiative to help revitalize the city. And the way we broke down the 10 million, there was 5 million for home ownership. There was 2.5 million for economic development, 1.5 million for the performing arts, and 1 million for financial capability and literacy. And let me just talk about a little all of those kind of areas. And by the way, when we started this initiative in Pontiac, there wasn't anybody else that was investing in Pontiac. They wanted to, they didn't know how to go about it. So that'll bring me back at the end to where we are today. So when we were looking at Pontiac and home ownership, when we initially got involved in the city, 73% of the residents were renters, and we wanted to encourage home ownership as a way to build a thriving community and allow homeowners to develop and grow wealth. I mean, that's kind of the American dream. You learn that if you invest in a home, over time, you should be growing and developing wealth as well. As a way to do that, we introduced a specific product called the Community Comeback Loan, which would lend up to 100% of the value of the home or 150% CLTV. The reason we did the latter, we wanted to allow owners to use a portion to rehab or fix any rundown homes. The way that we got into the community is we work with local churches as a way to connect with leaders and the constituents of that community. And as a result of working with the churches, we met a lot of people. And you look at where we are today, we've originated 15 million of those loans that we've put on our balance sheet. So that's the home ownership piece. The economic development piece, one of the investment projects, and this was a Pontiac Big Idea scheme or grant program. The grant program puts $500,000 in on an annual basis, and we're funding small businesses in the community each year through a competitive application process. And any small business can receive up to $10,000 as a grant. Each year, a winner will be awarded between $50,000 and $100,000 if they have a game-changing idea that produces a significant number of jobs in that area, or will attract people to Pontiac. And we've distributed $1 million as a result of that economic development grants today. The performing arts, they had a rundown theatre. We put money into that. We renamed it the Flagstar Strand Theatre. We got it open again. We made sure there was a board. It was being well run, and there was a lot of programs and events because you want to attract people to the area to come and visit it. To your point, you need people to know that it's a thriving community. There are things you can do there. There are restaurants or bars near the theatre. It's a good place to to get entertained, and there's things that you want to go and see. So we put $1.5 million into the theatre. And then the financial capability and literacy, we actually talk to local businesses. Obviously, you guys know Michigan is a hotbed for the automotive industry. We talk to GM. So we started going to local schools, working with students to give them skill sets around machine engineering, tooling, so that they could actually enter the workforce. And we work with GM to understand what those skill sets would need to be. So this was at the beginning of 17. You fast forward to where we are today, there are now 9 other organization foundations working in Pontiac who combined have committed an additional 6.5 million. And as I say, they were always there. They just didn't know how to go about it. We've created a framework where we have a committee consisting of various foundations working with the non-profits and there's 40 community leaders that we're plugged into, and now the investment dollars that we're spending now are focused on strategic investments, on civic and community capacity building, local entrepreneurship, workforce development, storytelling, so we can share what we're doing, and infrastructure and evaluation support. So the bottom line is, there isn't one thing. You've got to do a multitude of things. If you're working in partnership with others, we're a lot stronger because you've got to take care of all these different facets in order to build the community. It just needed organization and someone to start. So, that's just one example. There's others. I won't go into those now. I've been talking for long enough, but I think that's a great example of, Pontiac and all the different things we needed to focus on to really drive the home ownership in that particular geography.
It's so awesome. Hearing this, I would love to talk to the people who are on that project, because I've been telling loan officers, you're so full right now. Your cups are overflowing. You've got business coming out like everywhere. You answer the phone, there's money there. If you don't pour some of that back out, you're just going to be unhappy. And the giving people the opportunity to go into those communities and come up with killer programs, plans, and really develop something that's long lasting and that's really a forever change is just huge. And so it'd be neat to talk to people that were on that project to see how satisfied they were with their job when their job was, save lives and help people grow in the way that they can best grow. I think it's awesome. I was there's a really cool wildlife museum out here in Bend, and I was there, and there's this big giant thing on the wall about the founder, the guy that actually created the museum. And then there's a big thing on the wall about the guy that funded it. And it was so cool. I just stood there reading it going, you can't get success and then turn on everybody that got you there. And having so much success as a mortgage industry, you got to look back at those cities and go, let's develop back into those cities, because that's, we all realize that this is why we're here, right? This is why we've been given this opportunity. Danny, add to that on what you guys are doing over there.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, fantastic stories there, Leah, and just love hearing about the investment you're making there in your local community, and that's really what giving back is. When you have success, you need to share that success, and finding opportunities to serve your local community. I mean, it stimulates the economy. It makes it a better place for your employees to live and work. Everybody prospers together. But unfortunately, I would point out that we don't have that in every community in America. And that tends to be one of the challenges. And I think, Ken, this is where you were speaking from with your example about, access to a bank. So I think we're all familiar with the term of food deserts, right? Where we have neighborhoods that don't have, grocery stores with fresh produce and other means of really helping people get access to quality nutrition. And the same, unfortunately, is true for financial services. I think that was an observation, constantly made, when you think about products that are substandard from a financial point of view, they tend to be more prevalent in neighborhoods in the absence of more of our customary and standard financial institutions. And I know it's just not practical for banks specifically, to have brick and mortar presence in every neighborhood in America. There are very good reasons why that isn't practical, isn't possible. But what that then does is really create a barrier where then families living in those communities, especially if they want to understand how to become more financially capable, how to become successful homeowners, or even to get help should something happen once they have become a homeowner, they just don't necessarily have the access of that friendly face around the corner. And and I'd like to point out, I believe a fair majority of our audience today are mortgage brokers, and I've always felt that was the beauty of that model, is that it doesn't require a strong brick and mortar investment to be present in communities. And it is individuals who live and work amongst their neighbors who can actually spread not only the opportunity of mortgage financing. Sure, rates are great, and I can help you save on your house, but also how can I help you be financially successful on the path to homeownership? We all know homeownership is one of the best ways that the middle class has accumulated wealth, in our country. It's a tried and true method of passive investing. It keeps a roof over your head. It helps you accumulate equity. And, and we've experienced just year over year increase in home prices over the last decade. So, we certainly are in a period where that holds true. I know it's not always true, but it certainly holds true now. But taking a step behind that and recognizing that, the average family, we don't have, really robust financial literacy in our schools, whether it's, elementary through high school or even in colleges. Oftentimes, you have to be very intentional about selecting out these capabilities and trying to grab and understand them. Freddie Mac has worked very hard to create programs. I was listening in on the last session, and the conversation was there about the Credit Smart Financial Literacy Program. And we literally train hundreds of individuals every year, not on how to become financially capable, but how to teach other people to become financially capable. We have a great program. We dedicate our own resources. It's completely free. And so we are here to actually teach others how to teach families about financial capabilities. And I believe that's a really powerful way to try to bring the right messaging in a lot of these neighborhoods. And again, there may not be a bank there, a bank branch locally who has, staff on hand and a facility to provide this information. It may require, a mortgage broker maybe partnering with a real estate partner and conducting, a conversation like this, today with virtual and social distancing, perhaps like we're doing just now, through virtual events. I'm just starting to see, I'm actually amazed at just how commonplace the virtual environment has become and the amount of education and information one can gather through this vehicle. But perhaps in a time where we're a little bit more comfortable in gathering, it's a community center, it's a local school, it's some other venue where you can find that opportunity to promote that message. And even if it's a matter of just giving someone a bit of an entree and then directing them to an online resource where they can continue out that regimen, such as Credit Smart. And again, I don't want to over promote Credit Smart in and of itself, but I do want to make sure everybody understands it's not only instructor led, but it's also virtual, online, self-paced. So you can work with combinations of those things as you're trying to adapt, to this current environment. But from a Freddie Mac perspective, I just want to state, we know we are not a business to consumer type of organization. We work through partners, like our great customers and friends at Flagstar and their customers, mortgage brokers, real estate professionals, and other entities that, kind of partner with them. We actually have a concept that we call All for Home, which is we want to combine the resources in communities and bring everybody together to not only deliver, financial education and homebuyer education, but also just a really deep understanding about products and services and where you can get help.
Yeah, it's interesting. You can increase home ownership all you want, but if kids aren't eating, then, we've got to start there. We've got to start with how can we serve in, these areas that will make them successful down the road. I love, Lee, that you mentioned that you guys work through churches, because I know that there's a lot of churches that are open to these types of support mechanisms that you can, come in, and they could be a really good mechanism for getting to the community. I would also add, there's a lot of food banks out there that are just slammed right now. And a friend of mine just did this huge fundraiser for Oregon Food Bank. And every area where anybody on here is living, there's got to be something going on where they're providing food for families. What I found is in our local area, we go to One Life and support them. And with One Life, which is it's a food outreach program, what they'll do is they'll bring in people to talk about, whether it be home ownership or just let me see your resume. Let me work on your resume with you. Anybody can volunteer.
Did we lose Ken?
Oh, okay. I was afraid it was me. I think so.
Yeah, I'll jump in, Danny, because you said something that really resonated with me. And you're exactly right. You can't have bricks and mortar everywhere. It's just not practical. And we're exactly the same. And so, some of the things that we've set up, because it's about touching as many parts of the community as you possibly can. And so some of the things that we do, we've obviously set up the Flagstar Foundation. So the foundation is working with a number of nonprofits around Detroit, Michigan, and some of the other geographies where we have locations. We encourage our employees to join boards of nonprofits because that's another way where you can sort of get the word out. You can hear what's going on in the community, and then you may hear something where it triggers a thought, oh, maybe, Flagstar can help there, or we're a bank, we can maybe get involved. And so, we really do want our people to be involved in these nonprofit boards. And then the foundation that we've set up is sort of working with a lot of nonprofits, trying to understand who's looking for board members. We provide grants, so we get to hear about a lot of things that are going on, and that gives us, that connectivity. I think and then the other thing, just a couple of other areas that we've got involved in. Again, it's all about supporting the community, not directly home ownership, but one thing follows another. The Detroit Public Schools, we worked on this initiative where we trained school kids to complete tax returns. And so they were able to complete tax returns in the community for free. And in the last year, they prepared 42 tax returns that secured $65,000 of refunds for people and businesses in that community. And then the other one we worked on was from an arts and culture point of view, it's called Shakespeare in Prison. And this is a local theatre that actually goes into prisons, does Shakespeare plays. It builds confidence with the inmates, allows them to express themselves, which actually helps after they're released. And so what we found, or what they found, is at 8 years of doing this, 93% of the paroled Shakespeare in Prison alumni have not returned to prison. And again, it's just something else that, it helps the community. And so, I think the bottom line here is, and you were hitting on this, Danny, you've got to be involved in a lot of different things. It's not one size fits all. And if you are involved in a lot of different things, that's how you sort of spread your name. And so when it does come to home ownership and people are thinking about, well, who can I talk to? Or, I need to go and ask someone about this. Suddenly you become top of mind.
Absolutely. Yeah. You build that brand association, you establish yourself as a trusted advisor. And that's so important, especially in, underserved communities. By definition, there aren't people there that make these types of opportunities a normality in these spaces. And so you really have to work closely. We mentioned churches previously, other types of community organizations, but you really need to find those inroads there to really establish that trust and make sure that people understand that you're not just there to sell something, but you truly do care about the community. You care about their financial well-being. The worst thing, I think those of us in the industry could do, as we all believe, is to put someone in a home that they cannot keep, that to right. actually run into a state of, financial or a crisis as a result of being a homeowner. And that is not at all what homeownership is about. By the way, I loved your reference to the volunteer income tax. I've been a paid tax preparer and I've been a volunteer tax preparer. And I can tell you, just the ability to affect people's lives on something that really is not generally that complicated, but it's analogous to a mortgage, by the way. Like, filling out a tax form can be very intimidating, but it's really not difficult if you know what the intent is, how the process works, what the words mean. And so just translating that to mortgage and home ownership, in my mind, is just so important. But, as we all know, you have to file your taxes to qualify for a mortgage. And so I think that's a good example of, financial capability putting you on the path to home ownership potentially.
Yeah.
I'm back, you guys. Oh my gosh, what a horrible internet connection I had. I don't even know how much. I was just talking forever. I'm like, this must be gold. They're not saying anything. But apparently, and you guys were just stunned with this frozen face. I'm like, they are just really, really engaged right now. I want to ask a question. Lee, you had mentioned Pontiac. And, when I look around my town, I know where I would go. How did you identify Pontiac as a place that you guys wanted to serve?
Well, so it's a great question, Ken, because it would have been very easy for us here at Flagstar to have picked Detroit. We're literally 20 miles from Detroit, and as I say, Pontiac is maybe 8-9 miles. There was already a lot of good things going on in the city of Detroit, and we're involved in Detroit. Don't get me wrong, but obviously. The city of Detroit, there needs to be a lot going on because it's a huge geography, huge population, and we could have sort of, jumped in there with a multitude of other organizations and made a difference, but probably not as big a difference as Pontiac. And when we looked at Pontiac, we realized that, 10 million over 5 years could go much further. We realized nobody else was investing in Pontiac. We knew others were wanting to do something in Pontiac. They just didn't know how to go about it. And I think, we saw an opportunity to, go first, sort of lay the foundations, start creating that framework that others could then build on. And so that's why, we decided to really sort of go hard at Pontiac. And as I say, not to say we're ignoring Detroit, we're not, we're involved in that, but we just felt that, we could accomplish a lot more in Pontiac, given that it was underserved, basically.
It's interesting. We do a lot of work down in Guatemala. I'm down there a couple times a year. Typically, not this year. It's killing me. I've only been down there once, but we always go work in communities. And what we're always looking for is a strong community leader. We need somebody who is very connected to the community, who knows exactly what they need. We never want to come in and be like, you need houses. And they're like, we haven't eaten, and we didn't even think about food. And so you always want to make sure that you connect with the community leaders and that they've got, longevity. What you don't want is, what's happened in so many towns when they bring in FIFA, brings in the World Cup, and all of a sudden when they leave, the entire place is destroyed. So you want something where you've got community leaders that are not just there temporarily, but they're there and can actually carry this. And I think, Lee, that was my favorite part of your story is when you were saying what it's done, and not just, we have homeowners now, but that it's lit a fire where people are like, wait, I can get behind this. And you can change an entire community with that. And I think there's areas of all of our neck of the woods that could use that, and that have people that are willing and just waiting. And one of the things I found in Guatemala is there's so many people that are willing to put money towards something, but they do not have the time to do something there. And so, but there's a place for them, right? And then there's people that are hands-on, they have no money, but they're willing to go there and build something. And there's a place for them. And I think for everybody listening to this, for some of us, the answer is we need to get out there because we're good motivators at getting action, right? And others are going, wait a second, I'm so good at swinging a hammer. Like, I'm that guy to go in and do that. And then maybe others are educators. And so come in and educate. And if we can form that team, we're way better off at changing communities. And if we just go in, I'm going to choose that place and we're going to go, like, it just doesn't work as well.
Yeah. And that's the key. You've got to do this collaboratively with a team, because you need people. You need connectors. You need people who understand the community, the organizations in the community or around the community who want to do something and can bring everybody together. So you can't on your own just say, I'm going to do this, because, you'll fulfill just a part of the problem, but you've got to solve the entire problem. And it's a jigsaw puzzle. And so you need to bring a multitude of people together. And like I said, we're stronger together. And so you need different skill sets. And it takes time. It doesn't just happen. You've got to kind of build that foundation.
And you want to get that leverage too. I mean, you don't want there to be duplication of effort. You want to stand on the shoulders of people who have already, come before you and have established, those connectivities. And then, of course, the worst thing that can happen is just to be outright rejected as someone with, from the outside with malintent and not be trusted, because then you actually absolutely can't impact anybody on that basis.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you've got people from the community looking at you like, who are these guys? Then you obviously didn't go properly through the community leaders to get that done. And there's every area's got the people that are already supporting the community, right? Even though they don't have the resources that they need, there's people that have kind of dove into that community and they really do care. And tapping into those people is just huge. Do you think a couple things here? First, I've always told loan officers, if I was a loan officer, and I used to be back in '98, it's been a little bit, but as a loan officer, I'm targeting areas that nobody else is targeting. Like, it's so funny. People hang out in the jumbo communities. Like, I just want more jumbo loans. And it's like, why? Like, you're competing with everybody. It's just totally flooded with loan officers. Now you're going to be every single deal trying to negotiate deals. If you could go serve the underserved, there's an appreciation there of like, wow, you just had this homeownership fair. And Zoom is amazing for this, by the way. Yeah. So you just hosted a Zoom homeownership fair in an area that they won't even put a bank branch. Like, how much easier is it to go in and help those folks, those communities, and have that not just you funded loans, but you did something just huge for that family. Like, I think that there's the benefit of not hanging out where everybody else is fishing, but going out there and serving and getting that appreciation.
Well, if I may, I'd like to just compliment that subject. Yes, I mean, we firmly believe in this practice at Freddie Mac, and in the last several years, we've actually expended quite a bit of energy helping our clients understand where those opportunities exist, all the way down to their originator level. So we manage about 400 events per year. They used to be in person. Now they're done virtually. But what we try to do is to bring together local practitioners and partner them with local community organizations. We bring in market data and research so we can help identify where the underserved areas are and where the lending opportunities exist. And we even go so far as, we get access to credit bureau data in a redacted form. So we don't have, information about John Smith per se, but we can actually demographically see where there are consumers residing today who appear to be mortgage ready on its face. They've got the right income, they've got the right credit. There's a fair amount of affordability based upon that income and ability to purchase within that area. And that's information that we're willing to share freely and show and demonstrate to people so that we can help affect common strategies to go and try to affect that opportunity. But I would point this out too. Despite the pandemic and despite the rapid drop in interest rates and refinance taking up a fair portion of everybody's originations, what we saw in the second quarter was still a very robust amount of originations for purchase money. And we actually saw the first-time homebuyer rate increase. It had been running about 46 and change, mostly from 2017 through 2019. It jumped above 48 in the second quarter, in our book. So those opportunities are there. First-time home ownership is available. We know there's affordability crisis. That's another thing that we all really need to think about, is that there's far more demand for entry-level home ownership than there are available properties today. And so what we really need are more home construction. We need people kind of reevaluating what home means to them and what home type they would find sufficient for the needs of their family. I really do think psychologically the pandemic is starting to shape a lot of that thinking, and I do believe we're starting to even begin to see the trends of people moving from urban centers to more remote areas, knowing that they will not have to make that commute as frequently, just given that employers are now becoming more adjusted to this remote virtual working environment, by most accounts seeing rather great success with that model. So I do think that's going to influence the psychology of home ownership going forward, but we also just need the home building space to re-engage and build us some more houses.
Okay, so here's the fine line, and this is the massive struggle. We want to get more people into homes because that's the best way to build wealth, right? So if you loosen up guidelines to get more people into homes who typically could not afford to get into a home, but you're giving them their first shot to start building wealth, at some point you loosen them up so much that you've put somebody in a home that they can't, they're just struggling to make that payment every month. So where's the line, and how do we navigate that when we want people to have success in home ownership, but their debt to income ratio is now so high that the media picks it up and go, look at this person they put into a home. And we're like, but we gave them home ownership. Like, how do you navigate that line?
Yeah. So, this comes back to your previous question as well, Ken. And, you said a lot of people, a lot of LOs, they'll focus on the jumbo space because it's easy. That's what they know. They're in the comfort zone. And so, a lot of it boils down to, products. Do you have, the right products for LMI areas, first of all? Because if you do, then I think you're going to encourage the loan officers to, like you just said, I'm going to get out of my comfort zone. I'm going to focus on this geography because I've got no competition here and I can do a lot of business. And I think if you sort of look back 10 years and where we are today, there are a lot more products that are going to enable home affordability. I mentioned the comeback loan, and there's other products that we have, the Detroit Land Bank, as an example, the home mortgage, destination home. Freddie, they have products that encourage home ownership, whether you're sort of helping with the down payment, the closing cost assistance. So I think, it all starts with, do we have the right products for the loan officers so they've got them in the toolkit to be able to go to those communities? And I think today we are a lot better off. So then if you've got the right products, and if there's one thing sort of COVID has sort of taught us, coming back to your last point, with forbearance and the way that's working under the CARES Act, where we're allowing 6 months and then there could be a second 6 months. So I think, you've got to be a little more pragmatic in these communities. So if something does go wrong, you're not just rushing to, it's a delinquent loan and you're foreclosing on it. I think you've got to think through, okay, is there a longer forbearance period? Are there other things we can do to work with the borrower so that we give them every opportunity to try and work through any hardship they may be experiencing? And again, it's one of those things that's we're going to get better over time. We're going to try things, we're probably going to stumble, and then we're going to find the right solution. But I do think that just looking at COVID with the CARES Act and the forbearance period that was put in, we should all learn a lot from that. Because I think that can be helpful in the way we think about these structured products for those communities that are underserved. It shouldn't be the same process as a normal mortgage if things do go wrong.
So I was just thinking about your question. I think as mortgage professionals, we need to kind of have a Hippocratic oath of our own, right? To seek first to do no harm and ensure that, because the idea of homeownership is so precious, but we have seen the negative impacts, and that weighs heavily on the minds of people even today. I mean, the last major downturn we've had in the economy was over 10 years ago, but there was such a broad-based impact as it pertains to homeownership. Thankfully, to Lee's point, right now we have forbearance and some options that can help families remain as homeowners. But the worst thing we could do is to put someone into a home that they cannot afford, and as I mentioned previously, just kind of lead to the financial crisis and additional impact that is likely to have. So, we really try to strike that balance. One, of course, it begins with a foundation of education and ensuring that homeowners or potential homeowners, understand the nuances and how to engage with the various participants in the mortgage origination cycle, and they know what their roles are, and they know what questions to ask and how products are being offered to them, and the like. And then secondly, as we offer them products, and with Freddie Mac, we have several affordable products. Our notable one is the Home Possible 3% down product, but we have others that also are meant to help that first-time home buyer. And we're constantly, watching the margin, if you will, applicants who kind of make it through our process, and applicants who do not, and always challenging, like, okay, is that a positive or a negative given the environment? Is that one person on the margin? If we were to bring them over into the accept range, are they just as likely to be successful? Or given the environment, whether nationally, locally, systemically, are we also thinking that maybe we need to take that into account and think about how we sort of set the line there, and just ensure that we're appropriately serving. But in my mind, there's no substitute for just trying to help families kind of work into the status that we know will make them the most successful. And then as we try to provide a bit, more of that opportunity, then again, we're kind of watching that need on the margin and making adjustments appropriately. I also just add, one comment. My last comment was related to the shortage of housing out there, and I think the worst thing we could also do is open up the credit box in a way that it just really exacerbates the supply side, the demand side of that equation in the absence of supply, because what it's going to do then, of course, is just make that first-time home ownership price range even further out of reach for potential first-time home buyers. And so, again, I believe in a free economy. I believe in our ability to help and manage risk and help families understand what they're getting into. But I just really think, as an industry and as an economy, there really is no value in pressing beyond what is rational as it pertains to credit and credit risk in the name of just merely trying to expand home ownership. That equation just doesn't work.
Yeah, I just jump in. I mean, Danny's last point is exactly right, because there's two things. One, you don't want people spending such a big portion of their income on a mortgage that they're sacrificing, retirement savings, healthcare, food, or just, they're having to cut back in other areas of their lives or their family's lives because it is such a big burden, because that's not good either. So, we've got to be mindful of that. But Danny's made this point a couple of times, and he's right. I think, there's just not enough, I'll call them starter homes, that are kind of in that price range where, they're affordable, they're nice homes, desirable, and it's not going to put people in a situation where they're just overburdened with the cost of the mortgage. And I think we're seeing a bit of that at the moment. And I think it's because there is a lack of inventory of, those starter homes, basically.
Yeah, there's nothing small. I mean, if you're looking at, when I'm looking around our town, everything they're building right now is huge, and it's got just these are high-priced homes, and anything small becomes just a condo. Like, there's no, I remember the tiny home movement, and I was like, you guys remember after the crash, and they're like, all Americans want to live in tiny homes. I'm like, oh, that's adorable. It's a great first option, but beyond that, I'm not I don't know that goes anywhere. I do know manufactured housing is enormous. I know HUD's focused on that this year for, getting more people into manufactured homes, because especially in rural areas, it's like the perfect first house that allows you to get something that will with a double wide will actually increase in value. You can end up selling it and getting into something else. Danny, are you guys at Freddie Mac looking at that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you for the question. So actually, 3 years ago, there was a new regulation that was issued by the FHFA. It was actually in HERA in 2008, but just made its way to regulation, three years ago. But it's called duty to serve. And so the tenets of duty to serve are manufactured housing, rural housing, and not rural like USDA rural, but really more the high needs area of persistent poverty, and then affordable housing preservation. But on that manufactured housing front, we've done a lot of work to modify our product set to be more accommodative of lending in manufactured housing. But one of the things that I think we're most proud of through that venture is the a recognition that manufactured housing a long way. And so for those of us who have been around and think of manufactured housing, it's not the single or double wide trailer that we're often associate with that as the only solution. And there literally are builders out there who are constructing entire homes in a climate controlled facility, that they have a regular workforce that are not contractors, but they're actually W-2 employees. They were given the same kind of benefits and other opportunities as a corporation would, as opposed to the traditional site home builder. And they're putting out beautiful product that you cannot tell the difference from it, both its walk-up view or even how it's constructed. I've been in one of these plants and watched them assemble a home. I framed houses when I was in high school, and I can tell you, I recognize the same materials, the same process, but you guys are there, at least Leah's in the Detroit area, the home of manufacturing, for the auto industry, and that's exactly what happens here. These things just roll down a plant, and they're in a repetitive process. Robotics are integrated where possible, and so now you get a product that is, I would argue, superior in many ways because it can be made more energy efficient. You don't have a envelope sitting there exposed to the weather as it's under construction, but it's all being again designed and sealed in a climate controlled environment, and because of the efficiencies of the process, can be much more affordable for families than a traditional site built home.
Lee, are you guys doing anything in the manufactured home world?
Yeah, a little bit, not enough. I think and I think Danny's right. I mean, when you think of manufactured housing today versus 10 years ago, it's totally different. From a lender's point of view, what obviously helps us is knowing that you've got Freddie behind you. They're very supportive of the product, because, as I say, if otherwise we're putting these things on our balance sheet, and we're prepared to put so much on our balance sheet, but there's only so much you can allocate of your balance sheet to these type of products. So knowing that the agencies are supportive, right behind this, that makes a huge difference, because then we can obviously originate a lot more, and ultimately that's what we want to do.
How much are you guys focused right now on writing guidelines for 3D printed homes?
I'll answer to say, I don't know that we're writing guidelines. We are very close to some of the major manufacturers who are experimenting with this model. And again, I've had the pleasure of not only meeting with these bright individuals face to face, but actually going and witnessing a home under construction. The Mortgage Bankers National Conference was in Austin, Texas last fall, and that is the place where I'd say one of the more advanced technologies exists in a company called Icon Builders. And so we went out, and actually what's interesting, I think apropos to this panel, they're experimenting by building housing for homeless individuals through local non-for-profit organizations. And so they have some land on the fringe of the city there, that they were able to acquire at low cost, and then they're putting in, beautiful, solidly constructed homes that are far less expensive to construct, and at the same time, then the company is getting the experience of testing different designs, different capabilities with their tools. And so basically for us, it is not about having a specific home type. One, you of course need to have any type of structure be permitted by the city and approved by the city. Austin happens to be one of few places that this has actually been promoted and accepted, and so that work has been done. And then you just, of course, have to have enough of it in an area that you can get an appropriate value on it, right? There has to be that desirability demonstrated by the market in order for it to truly become a conforming type of housing stock, and therefore assess value. But there's nothing about the way it's constructed in and of itself that I think gives us pause about its capability or worthiness for financing. It's just a matter of establishing value based upon market velocity. It's pretty cool.
Yeah,
though.
It'll be funny watching this in the future, looking back at what we were saying in 2020 about 3D printed homes, because I think it's just this huge potential world, and I love that you're already diving into it. And I was in Austin for the conference, and I wish I would have gone and checked that out. That's pretty cool. I imagine Portland, right across the river from us, is probably the next, because their city ordinances, I think they would love something like that and give some people some housing. It'd be pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Final thoughts from you guys on, the future homeowner and how do we not repeat the mistakes of the past? Any final thoughts before I pass it back to John?
I think it's a lot of what we've discussed over the last hour. I think we've all got to make a concerted effort and a commitment, right? We can't do things sort of individually. I think we've got to sort of come together and work collaboratively. But I think we've got to support entire communities. We can't just sort of be solely focused on just home ownership. You've got to create a thriving community, a desirable community, an area where people want to be. So you got to think about that first and foremost. And as I say, I think we can accomplish that by working together and forming strong partnerships. Do you have the right products? We've talked about the inventory shortage. So is there anything we can do there to sort of make home ownership more affordable in terms of just that starter home and increasing the number of starter homes we have? And I think the other thing we haven't really touched on this over the last hour, but the other thing that's got to play a big part is technology. We look at the way we're sort of doing this WebEx. I mean, a year ago, you would never have thought about this. We'd have all been sat, in the same room somewhere in the country. But I think technology can help us play a big part, not just in terms of ease of use, but scalability as well. And so that can help us reach a lot of people very quickly and scale up. And so I think, technology is going to be important as we move forward.
Just so I'm quoting you right, you did say the knowledge coop is the future. So I appreciate that. That's awesome. Danny, final thoughts from you.
Yeah. No. Let me just grab onto that. So one, I'm glad Lee brought up technology. That's where I was thinking. We've been working very hard at Freddie Mac over the last several years to decomplicate the whole mortgage origination process. Recognizing that there's a lot of challenges with that. One, as we complicate it for our customers and for mortgage originators, that only translates to time. Time is money. Money is cost. That cost is ultimately borne by the borrower at the end of the day, as we look at an inefficient process. So it is our hope that by using technology, access to data, dare I even say artificial intelligence and robotics, that we are trying to help that decisioning chain happen much more certainly, much more dynamically, in a way that lenders can trust that decision and not worry about risk of selling or risk of buyback. And so we've put a lot of efforts into virtually reimagining the whole mortgage process. And and back to the analogy of Detroit and the manufacturing process there, it is all about efficiency. It's a fixed cost, and the more efficiency you can bear, the better. And then on this other aspect of just ensuring that everybody has equal access to home ownership, how can we really spread this message in a way that it's understandable, it's clear, take the mystery out of it. I think decomplicating it is definitely part of that, but it's intimidating. I mean, it's the single largest purchase most anybody will make in their lifetime is their home. And if the most expensive thing you ever bought in your life was a car, and then you immediately jump into a house with a 6-7 times value and debt that you're taking on, I mean, that can be overwhelming. overwhelming. I remember that myself as a young person, just even contemplating that, even after having been in the business for 7 or 8 years, right? So we just really need to think about how to make it more accessible, more understandable, more efficient on behalf of families. And then lastly, I'll just say, recognizing that the future is not the past. Things are changing. There's demographic changes. There's attitudes about home ownership. There's changes in the way people actually make money, the way they think about their family. And so, and we have a lot of people staying in place today. We have, record low interest rates that are likely to, if we see a rate increase, likely to want to keep people in the same homes they're in today, hanging on to that 2 to 3 handle interest rate. So then there's going to be a lot more emphasis on home renovation and home improvement over time, as those families settle in. But that's the way I think about the future.
And I think I would add just that focus on education. I think education is lacking across the board, and educating consumers and educating originators even on, it drives me insane when I see people take fair lending training that teaches them the year ECOA passed and the importance of understanding the who you can't discriminate against, versus talking more about, why should we treat everybody equally? Why should we? Like, what's the advantage in actually being compliant, rather than just, hey, memorize these numbers and you should be good. And so I think education will play a huge role in that. And educating borrowers. I think going into schools and saying, especially right now, going to schools and saying, hey, who's doing your video calls on economics, and who's doing your video calls on home ownership? And I think there's a tremendous opportunity. We actually sat down with our kids at the beginning of this whole lockdown and gave them each $100 and showed them how to invest in stock. We're like, which one of these stocks do you think is coming back? And we bought some United and some Alaska Airlines and some even movie theater stock. Like, hey, they might come back. And so sitting down and giving them an education they wouldn't have gotten at school anyway. Like, why not dive in and pour into these kids some education on finances and credit reporting and all that stuff. So I appreciate what both of you guys do in education. I love that you're always reaching out and trying to help, especially trying to help the broker community get better at educating their own consumers. I think that's a great resource for us. And now we've got John and Josh back. Gentlemen, welcome back. And we'll pass it back to you. So thanks, you guys.
You are awesome, Ken. Everybody, John, I don't know about you, man, but what another incredible session. It's been an incredible 2 days, but Lee, Danny, and Ken really talking about the past challenges, taking on the future as well. There's a lot of key points in there that for me were really exciting. And in all, before I kind of turn it over to you, John, I want to thank Flagstar Bank and Freddie Mac again. What an incredible 2-day event. As I've mentioned a couple times, we've packed so much into a short amount of time. But John, holy smokes, brother. I don't know about you, but it was just amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I thought these were 4 sessions over a 2-day period, condensed time frame, but just great topics. I mean, that final session with Lee, Danny, and Ken, I'll challenge everybody to go back and watch it, right? Because I was taking notes during the session. There are just some things that reminded me of when I got in the industry 25 years ago. And the one thing I took away, right, and there was just a ton of information there, but I think one of the best parts of the model for a lot of the individuals that are seeing this, whether they're loan officers, real estate agents, is you are in your local community. You are where our borrowers, your borrowers exist. And what I would say in summary is the thing that rings out in my mind is investing in the community, right? And that doesn't just mean, doing mortgage transactions for people. And you heard a lot of different things from all those speakers around how you can reinvest your time, your energy, your efforts into your community to do good. And ultimately, if you do that, I guarantee you that leads to a successful business strategy for you and your company. But more importantly, think about the value that you bring to your community in doing some of those things. So again, you'll get these sessions. If you registered, you'll get the recordings, you'll get the sessions. You see on there some valuable resources to go to. And kind of in closing, I'd like to do the following, right? Number one, Josh, thank you to not only you and to everybody at Freddie Mac and to everybody at the Knowledge Coop, because while you saw some people in front of the camera, there's a lot of hard work by a lot of individuals that you don't see from Freddie, from the Knowledge Coop, and from Shred, and from Flagstar to help put this on. So thank you to everybody at those organizations. And then specific shout outs, right? We had the new now factors and trends, the new now in affordability. and factors and trends that are shaping that market. I want to thank Len Kiefer and Cindy Waldron for that. What's next in forbearance? Obviously, Courtney Thompson moderated that from Flagstar, but Kevin Palmer and Terry Molino from Freddie Mac, thank them. Tools to master the current market, the first session today. Obviously, Bev Meeks from Flagstar was on to moderate, but we had Christy Suk and Nadia Vital from Freddie. And then obviously we just ended with the session helping borrowers with future tackle challenges of the past with Lee Smith from Flagstar, Danny Gardner from Freddie, and obviously Ken from the Knowledge Coop, kind of moderating in that fireside chat. So I cannot say thank you enough to everybody. And thank you to everybody that registered. We had over 1,000 people register for this event. Maybe we are busier than we've ever been and not everybody got to attend it live, but as a registrant, you'll get the recorded sessions sent to you. So take some time and invest in yourself and educating yourself. But again, can't thank everybody enough for taking the time. And Josh, any parting words for you, but I appreciate your help with this for sure.
Dude, it's been my absolute pleasure and opportunity. And like you said, thank you to everybody involved. There were so many people behind the scenes. Thank you to the speakers. So many of these people took time out of their busy days. And Ken mentioned this at the end. It's getting educated. At the end of the day, why this was put on by Flagstar and Freddie was so we as originators, we as an industry could ultimately go back and help consumers. Danny said it perfectly at the end there. We are helping people make one of the largest decisions, financial decisions people will ever make, ladies and gentlemen. And it is up to us as mortgage professionals, as advisors, to take this knowledge that you got today. Don't just sit on it. What drives me crazy, John, is people come to events like this, they'll take a nugget and they'll just move on and it's on to the next big thing. No, take this stuff, implement it. And John, to what you were exactly saying, get involved with your communities. I talk about using content to capture a community. Use how you're serving a community, document it, share it with the world, and not only will you make your community a better place, but ultimately you'll grow your business. So John, thanks to everybody involved.
Yeah, Josh, last thing real quick, because you touched on something I wanted to hit on and I didn't do it. That's the challenge for things like this, right? You spend the time, you get a bunch of information, and then what do you actually do with it, right? And Josh, you've heard me say this numerous times. I know that we're busier than we've probably been in a very long time, and in some cases more than ever in people's careers. But right now is the exact right time when you should be stopping, planning, and focusing on things like you just learned over the last 2 days to help grow your business and your future in this industry. Now's the time to do it, because when rates go up, or if rates stay static but everybody's refied, guess what? When you do it then, you're already behind the 8 ball. If you start it now, you're ahead of the curve. So that's my challenge to everybody. Figure something out you learned or something that you liked and implement it now going forward, and you'll be ahead of everybody else.
Mic drop. And on that, John, guys, we want to thank everybody again for the incredible 2-day event. This virtual summit has been absolutely awesome. And I'm going to end with those words of John: go out and execute. You learned something. You've got a knowledge. You got a nugget of knowledge. Now it's time to go take action. From everybody here at Shred, Flagstar, and Freddie, thank you so much for attending. We appreciate you. We love you. Now it's time for you to go shred, go show up, hustle, repeat every day. See you guys.